I had to be more than 50 years old to experience that moment of healing. This, to me, is the advantage that writers have with every passing year.
How does a writer find defining moments in their own life?
Kathy and I have developed kind of a list of characteristics that we think describe defining moments, and that they help us when we go looking for defining moments. So that list includes things like the moment a dream was born. It could be the moment a dream died. Sometimes defining moments are moments of birth or death. And that can be a literal death, or it could be a figurative death, the death of a business, the death of a relationship, or the birth of a relationship. We think about moments of discovery. So for a child who's been adopted, the moment they discover that they were adopted might redefine their understanding of themselves. A special kind of discovery is a lesson that's learned. So Dorothy in Oz makes the discovery that there's no place like home. And that discovery becomes the mantra that allows her to travel back to Kansas. It was the discovery that she needed when she set out from Kansas. She didn't think that the people at home were special enough to cherish. She thought that real life lay somewhere out there. And along the way, she makes the discovery that there's no place like home. And that redefines who she is. Sometimes we're looking for a moment when a wound was suffered or a loss was incurred. Other times we're looking for a moment of the birth of hope, or a moment of healing, a moment of deep emotional or spiritual change. And with that, it's not a checklist, but those categories, we can look at our own lives and say, well, what was a moment of deep emotional change that I've experienced? If I'm a morose person, was I always that way? And if not, when did that change? Kathy found an old black and white picture of her dad when he was a young boy. And Kathy's dad, as I knew him, was a serious mechanical engineer and not playful. That's the last word I would use for him. And yet this picture showed this impish kid with this like wicked smile on his face. And Kathy and her brother turned to each other when they found this picture and said, "Did you know that person?" And they both said, "No, I never met that guy." Well, what was the moment when he went from the playful imp to the very serious, very dour person that my wife grew up with? That at least turns our gaze in the right direction. And we can start looking and seeing, is there a moment like that? Now, there are times I think that we can't find the moment, either because it happened when we were so young that we have no memory of it, or it may be so traumatic that we have not allowed ourselves to remember it. But we know we walk with the limp. And I discovered in myself a sort of evidence of a wound that I don't ever remember suffering. But I remember as far back as 6 years old having the damage. And so I don't know what that defining moment was. I just know that it exists. And I know that I learned from that experience that I must not let people know the real me or they would not want me. I learned that men are dangerous, and I had to, I have no memory that accounts for those things, but I had to look at that history nonetheless and recognize those lies as being so deep in my firmware that I couldn't remember a time where they weren't there. And then I had to learn the truth that would neutralize those lies. And I still feel like those lies are true, but I now know they're not, and I'm able to tell myself, here's the truth. There are people who actually know you, and they actually love you. And so the lie that if people know you, they won't love you, that's a lie, no matter how that feels. And I've learned I'm not a little boy anymore, and I don't have to be afraid of grown-ups. It's not actually dangerous to have human encounters, even though it still feels dangerous to me. Well, so I've just described a moment of healing. That's also a defining moment. I had to be more than 50 years old to experience that moment of healing. This, to me, is the advantage that writers have with every passing year. We keep getting more and more life experience, and so we have more and more to draw on. If you're 20, well, you've been through middle school, so you have, you've come through at least one war.
That's painful.
And, yes, and so, I always think of the popular kids. I'm not sure they exist. I haven't met anyone as an adult who says, oh yeah, I breezed through 8th grade. It was awesome, my favorite year. It's just awful. But a 20-year-old is going to have 20 years of life experience. A 40 or a 50 or a 60-year-old writer is going to have more life experience. And so while the industry may have a preference, for 22-year-old writers, because it's exciting, like it's exciting to get a new sports car, mostly we give awards out to people with a little more mileage on them. And it's because, in part, of the greater life experience, which gives you more access to these kinds of moments.
You just jogged my memory because I knew someone who was considered very popular, and their worry was they thought, A, everyone thought they were stuck up, and B, they were worried about their image. And when they left the house, how did they look to everybody? So to them, that was a huge concern because they were afraid of breaking that image. And to me, I saw the person as had it all together, and they had all these people around them that wanted to be around them, but they were terribly concerned. So I guess you're right that to them, it was still tragic.
I do think about people whose faces are on magazine covers, and there is a burden that goes with that. Now, we might think, oh, boo-hoo, you're beautiful and famous, but there's a burden that goes even with the popularity that rises to the level of celebrity. An acquaintance once said to one of my children, you don't know how hard it is to be so pretty. And at the time I thought, that's a line I need to put in a script. But as you talk, I think, no, that actually, for this young lady, she experienced that as pain and anxiety, and all of that kind of human experience is interesting to me, both as a human but also as a storyteller. That's an interesting character. That wasn't my life experience, but it's an experience that's interesting to me.
Is there a limit on how many defining moments someone can have in their life?
I've been thinking a lot lately about defining moments, and I keep discovering more of them for myself, I'm not sure that the half dozen is any sort of absolute limit at all. I think that our lives don't continue in a straight line. There are reversals. There are moments of transformation. Our lives seem to unfold kind of in chapters. We don't just do the same thing the same way forever. Well, the whole world with COVID has experienced that things actually change, sometimes quite dramatically. So I could probably put my finger on a dozen moments that from my own life that are pretty profound and create distinct moments of before and after. So I don't know that there's an absolute limit. I just think that practically speaking, when we come to characters, we probably want to work with a manageable number of them so that we don't dilute their impact and their power, especially if we're thinking of a standalone feature film. If we're talking about a television series that goes for many, many episodes, then you probably could do justice to a dozen defining moments over, 100 episodes, if anybody is doing 100 episodes anymore. At some point, Aristotle talked about how many acts there should be in any play. And he said, well, it just depends how long the play is. Because an act has to do with a reversal. And he says there should be a big reversal in each act. A life that is nothing but reversal starts to feel not like a real life. It would be like a football game where there was an interception or a fumble on every play. It just becomes absurd. But he says you've got to have enough of them to keep it interesting. So that's his formula. He doesn't tell us, how many acts there should be in a 1-hour television pilot. But the general principle is there should be enough to keep it interesting, but not so many that it becomes absurd. And I suppose the same could be said of defining moments.